If you've achieved your weight loss goal or if you've made progress and you want to make sure that you don't gain that back, it's really important you understand the additional strategies to help you with that goal. So today I'm sharing 5 tips to help you maintain your weight loss progress and not gain the weight back in today's video. My name's Autumn. I'm a certified clinical nutritionist with my master's nutrition human performance, and today's video is sponsored by Kettle and Fire. More on them in a bit. Okay, the first tip is to not go back to what didn't work before. Oftentimes the food that didn't support your goals in the past or cause the weight gain to happen in the first place are not very satiating or really high in sugar or really high in refined carbohydrates, and likely probably a combination of those 3. This combination of these hyper palatable foods makes it really easy for us to eat beyond our body's needs. It essentially hijacks our satiety and makes it almost impossible to self-regulate or to feel satisfied from our meals. This same process also makes those foods habitual and addictive. Now, for some people, after they've experienced the weight loss, adding some small amounts of these foods back in can be perfectly fine. If you haven't heard me talk about the treat meal structure, definitely recommend you check out that video. I'll have it linked right up here. Some really great tips and strategies for exactly how to do that. But it's also important to understand your limits and what it is that your body really needs. If you know that those foods are just way too addictive for you, that it causes you to spiral out and only focus on those foods that don't support your goals, then staying away from those foods completely might be a better option for you. You need to find the balance of what works best for you, and ultimately going back to what didn't work before is only going to cause the weight gain to come back. Okay, the second tip is to reintroduce carbohydrates slowly. Now, oftentimes after achieving a weight loss goal, most people tend to be more insulin sensitive. This means you tend to have a bit of an easier time using carbohydrates as fuel. And because of this, it also means you can probably have a bit more flexibility with the amount and type of carbohydrates that you add back in. You don't necessarily need to stick with exactly what caused you to lose weight in the first place for the rest of your life, but you do need to add these more starchy, insulin spiking foods back in a little bit more slowly so you can know what your individual tolerance really is. But you also don't want to start off with the most high glycemic foods possible. Instead, start off with medium glycemic load starches, because likely during your weight loss process, you've been mostly sticking to low glycemic carbohydrates, like low sugar fruits, non-starchy veggies, and those medium glycemic carbohydrates have less of an impact on blood sugar and therefore less of an impact on insulin. So it's just not going to be as big of a shock on the system. So some of those medium glycemic carbohydrates could be like half a cup of pineapple or half a cup of lentils or half a cup of beans. These tend to have some fiber, are slower releasing, and won't have as big of an impact on insulin. And starting with that smaller amount, like half a cup, is also a good place to start, especially as you're easing back into incorporating some of these foods. And if you find that your weight is stabilizing or even still going down with those medium carbohydrates, then you could even experiment with some slightly higher glycemic starches that are at least more nutrient dense. So this could be like a half a cup of sweet potato. But I definitely wouldn't advise going straight to those higher glycemic starches like rice or bread products or pastries. Those are a lot higher glycemic, have a bigger impact on our insulin level, and can cause a big sudden rush of water retention and then even eventually the weight gain. Now, some people might be able to reintroduce some of these higher glycemic starches like rice, especially if you're someone who, now that you've achieved your goals have changed and you're adding in a lot more higher intensity exercise that is more demanding. But if you aren't as active, if you're more sedentary, then these higher glycemic starches are probably going to be something that you don't really want to include, especially on a weekly basis. Now, at any point during this slow reintroduction period, if you notice that your weight starts to go up, then you might want to stick with the lower down set of carbohydrates. So if you were at the high glycemic, go back down to those medium glycemic carbohydrates instead. And an extra mini tip on this carbohydrate section is to also make sure you're having protein before you eat those more medium or higher glycemic starches. It tends to help stabilize blood sugar level a lot better than just having those carbohydrates first or alone. And especially if you can combine the protein with collagen, it's been found to really help boost satiety and prevent cravings for foods that would work against your goals anyway. I personally like to get my collagen from whole food sources like bone broth, especially with today's sponsor, Kettle and Fire. Kettle and Fire is a really high quality bone broth company. They use bones from grass-fed cows and they slowly simmer them so that they can get as much collagen out of those bones as possible. And they make it so convenient to add high quality collagen dense bone broth into the day-to-day, because honestly, not all of us have the time to simmer bone broth for like 20 hours. So instead you can grab Kettle and Fire and all that high quality work is done for you. And because it's so convenient, it's really easy to add into pretty much any recipe and get a hit of collagen. I'll add Kettle and Fire as the base to my soups or stews or chilies. I particularly love using their Chipotle beef bone broth for a lot of my chili recipes. But then I even add in bone broth to sauces as well to give it an extra boost of collagen. And Kettle and Fire comes in a lot of different delicious flavors like lemongrass ginger or turmeric. But my personal favorite and the one that I use the most is still their original bone broth. It's so easy to add into so many different recipes, so versatile, and it really just goes with everything. And Kettle and Fire has been a longtime supporter of this channel for over 2 years. I love working with them because it's a brand that I personally use every single week. And Kettle and Fire is super generous and they're offering my community 20% off their bone broth when you use code AUTUMNBAITS at checkout. So especially if you're trying to get your collagen in, trying to get your satiety up, you'll want to make sure that you can get that 20% discount. I'll have the code and the link down in the description below. Okay, the third tool you need to focus on is switching your metrics. In other words, you need to throw out your scale. Just a traditional regular scale has never been a reliable source for tracking progress because all it does is tells you your weight. It does not tell you how much body fat you lost, how much muscle mass, or how much water. But it's especially important to kind of ignore the scale once you're in maintenance mode, because from stress or sleep or whatever it might be day-to-day life, you can have up to 4 pounds of water retention. And it's really easy to see those numbers, get stressed, and then suddenly make some drastic change to your diet. Instead, more reliable numbers is to focus on muscle mass and body fat. My personal favorite method of keeping track of this is the InBody, which I know isn't available everywhere, but here's what you guys have to do. You have to go to your local gym or scour all your gyms and see which one has the InBody or something similar. I mean, my gym where I pay $19 a month, like it's a super cheapy gym, they have an InBody. A lot of places actually have it now. You can get a baseline done and the baseline will show you how much muscle mass you have, how much body fat percentage, and even the distribution of muscle mass throughout your body as well. You can get that done, and then if you want to keep track of those metrics, get it done every 4 to 6 weeks beyond that. You don't need to be getting it done more frequently than that. You're just looking for trends. You can use the at-home scale options, and I have referenced this in the past, although these are just not as reliable. And if you have the ability to get the InBody done, I would really recommend it. Okay, the fourth tool is to work on increasing muscle mass. Now, you don't have to be Arnold. Don't worry, if you don't want to have like really big muscle, you don't need to. But increasing that muscle density is important for helping to maintain your progress. Because as we increase our muscle mass, it actually makes us less carb sensitive, which means you are able to have more flexibility with the types of foods that you're eating. So it makes your day-to-day life a lot more simple as well. Increasing your muscle mass also helps to maintain bone density, which is often lost during the weight loss process. So what's the point of losing weight if some of that's coming from bone and potentially increasing your risk of osteoporosis in the future? And some of the best methods for increasing muscle mass or muscle density are using some form of resistance or strength training. And this is a broad category. There are a bunch of different ways to do this. You can be doing the traditional bodybuilding if you want to on that end, or just using free weights, dumbbells, body weight, calisthenics. There's even the boot camp style classes if you're more of a class person. There's free workouts on YouTube. You can use my 21-day intermittent fasting program workouts that are included in that as well. The key thing is that your muscles are actually getting challenged. Although something like yoga is fantastic and has its perks, same thing as walking, which I'm a big fan of, it also has its perks. It doesn't have the same impact of challenging your muscles. So if you're already doing those things, great. But if you really want to make sure you can maintain your progress, you're going to want to add in some type of resistance training as well. Which if you guys want to check out my 21-day intermittent fasting program that also includes those workouts and workout videos, I'll have it linked down in the description below. Okay, the fifth tool is to stay ahead of hunger and know how to address it. Now, as the body fat percentage goes down, your body just has physically less energy to be pulling from. And because it's getting less energy from the body, you now likely need to eat a little bit more from your actual food. And as a result, you're probably going to experience some increased hunger as your body fat percentage gets lower. Now, the key is to know how to address this hunger. The important thing to remember is to not go back to snacks. Snacks are the foods that can work against a weight loss goal. I've talked so much about this in the past. If you want a refresher, you can check out any of my videos on weight loss without counting calories for more details on that. But what you probably do need to do is either increase the protein or the fat at your actual meals to help boost the satiety and prevent that hunger. In fact, this is something I commonly do with my clients. Once they're in this maintenance mode and they notice this slightly increased hunger, we usually have to tweak their protein and or fat so that they're able to get satiated and not need snacks between their meals. And especially if you followed my last tip and you started to really increase your exercise and resistance training, you might even want to be adding in some of those medium or slightly higher glycemic starches to help with muscle recovery. while finding your own personal carbohydrate balance in the process. Now, although I'm not a big fan of snacks and having them habitually is not something that will help support goals over the long term, there are always going to be those situations where maybe you're stuck and you need to have something to eat in between a meal. So if you are going to snack, make sure you check out the only snacks that I recommend with this video next. Also, if you're new to my channel and you love this science-backed information, make sure you subscribe right here. Come out new videos every Tuesday and Thursday. All right, guys, thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in my next video.